Yeah. So in this session, what we will talk about this and concepts related to this, right? So first we will see what's the need of this. So if you see person, FST name, LST name, and if you want to access these FSTNM and LSTNM into this function, right? Simple code I have written const person FSTNM LSTNM, and if you want to access this FSTNM LSTNM inside this function, you'll write something like this, but this will give you error. So if you want to handle this, you need to do some provision over here. I will come back to this point shortly. Let's minimize it. Okay, now here function, normal function, a simple function I have written, and into that if you see console.log something called as this, and let us see what output we get. Let's clear it. Node app01, sorry, tsc app01.ts. Error.
That code you have to comment.
Yeah, we need to comment this thing. Then let's run it again. Okay, and node app01.js. Yeah, now if you see over here, something is getting printed. So what we have done, if you see, just a normal function we have written, inside that console.log this we have written, and you are simply calling that function, which is printing something like this, some information you are getting over here. And here it has written object global. We'll talk about that. I will comment this line, and here same thing we have written in an anonymous function, and I'm uncommenting this. And can you see console.log this, and what it is printing? Just tsc and node app01. Again it is printing something like this. Again it is printing something like this. Again it is saying something like global. Now everywhere you will get one concern global. Here also you'll get global, here also you'll get one global. So what do you mean by this global? That is the first thing we need to understand. Okay, now if we have tried with the normal function, anonymous function, let us try it with the arrow function, what it gives you. Okay, now you might be expecting again global over here, and see here, and node, can you see there is empty curly braces, which means that you are getting empty object in this case. Okay, so this empty object, why it is printing empty object? Answer lies in something call, bind and apply. We'll talk about that. But before that, what do you mean by this global object? You need to know. This is a interview type question. Interviewers like this very much. What do you mean by this? Okay, so global object in JavaScript, the global object is a special built-in object. In JavaScript, global object is a special built-in object that exists in every execution environment like web browser or Node.js, and acts as a container for the variables and the functions that are accessible from anywhere in your code, right? It plays a crucial role how JavaScript programs are run. Here is a breakdown of the key point: available everywhere, environment specific names, and contains built-in functions. As we discussed, variables and functions defined directly in a global scope not inside any function or the block scope are the properties of the global object. The variables and the functions defined directly in the global scope. That is not inside any function or the block are the properties of the global object. This means you can access them anywhere in your program regardless of where they are defined. Okay, if you write something inside this variable, this is not a part of the global scope, right? This is the part of this block or the function scope. Now you can define variables in the global level also. We'll see that. Now there are the environment specific names are given to the global object. Depending on the environment you are using, global object can have different names. In a web browser, it is a window object. Window objects are called as a global object. Okay. You can access properties like document or console directly without prefixing them to the window. Now in the Node.js, it is called as global. We are running right now. Just for running purpose, we are using Node.js. Right? Hello?
Yes.
Why we are using Node.js? Just for running purpose. Otherwise, we are going to do everything in a web browser. Now, it contains the built-in functions. The global object also holds the essential built-in functions. I will write one function. The global object also holds essential built-in functions like alert in the browser, set interval, both browser and the Node.js, and many more. You can use these functions directly without any import. Now see what I wanted to do. Set interval. See from where this is coming. This is defined in the global object. Now I want to call this function, or I want to call this function after every 2 seconds. Here I can pass 2 milliseconds. Now clear tsc and node like this. See here, after every 2 seconds hi is getting printed. Can you see that?
Yes.
So this is a built-in function, set interval. From where it is coming? From where it is coming? So this function is coming from a global scope. If you see here, a global object, if you see here, it has written set intermediate, clear intermediate, and can you see set interval function? It is the part of this global object. Correct?
Okay.
So when you talk about the global object, what is global object? Is a special built-in object that exists with every execution environment like web browser or the Node.js, and acts as a container for variables and the functions that are accessible from anywhere. Hello?
Yeah. So, I mean, how can you identify it is a global variable or general a JavaScript function that every developer can use?
Now see, presently if you write this function, I'll show you that, just a minute. Now that is different.
These are predefined. Whatever you see, like here you see
Now
and
interval.
yeah. So, so these whatever this global object has some predefined functions or what we say variables, something like that.
Say that again, please.
This global object has some like interval,
This
set
this
interval, set timing. So
correct.
these are inbuilt
Functions.
functions
Correct.
already defined in this global.
Correct.
So my question is, like we see different functions. Like for example, for array we use different function.
That
So how
ha
can you identify like the set interval is a part of the
global. Okay.
object and the others are the part of the actual
JavaScript code.
JavaScript.
If you are talking about the array, an array dot filter you say, or array dot length you say. So array is not part of the global object, right?
Right, but not exactly array, but something else, some like any other function other than console dot. Uh,
See, global object gives you only these many functions. Clear
they are
interval.
predefined and they are fixed.
Yeah, they are fixed.
Okay.
They are fixed. You need to change in which environment you are running and you'll get it into the documentation. Correct? So you will get that thing into the documentation. But whenever uh, whenever you want to add something to the global scope, we will see that how exactly you will do it. That is possible. We can add something to the global scope. Presently also I can show you, but we are using a Node.js. Node.js is having some different way of adding object into the global scope, and the web Angular or JavaScript in a web is having some different way to add it into the global scope. That's why I'm not telling you right now, but we can do that.
Can I relate it with maybe I know? Can we relate it like, for example, in the browser, if you open two tabs and from the two tabs you are accessing your programs on your site.
Uh-huh.
So that may be two different contexts.
Correct.
And if you want to share something between these two, you can use the global variable, something like that. Or is it only related to the single context?
Single context. When you talk about two tabs, it is something different. Okay.
No, because like in my tool as well, we have the concept of context. We can share the information between the context as well. So that's why I'm trying to relate this. Or totally it is different.
It is different. It is different. Okay, now see, same code I have written over here in the browser. Normal function, right? And simply I have called normal function over here. Correct? Here. And can you see what it has written? Window. And see now, this object is having how many methods? Because an execution environment is different. So this is browser. This is what? Browser. Now see close method. A lot of other methods you will find. Interval is there. If you see the interval method, you will find somewhere set interval. But there are a lot of methods actually. That's why it is a little bit confusing, right? See, these many things are there. Yeah, set interval here. So this is the global object. Now, if I define any variable, let me write it anyways. So if I define any variable, say here where a is or let's give a little bit longer name is equals to 90, and again print that global object, window object.
It is there.
Where?
Oh, little.
Can you see this variable is added to what? a global object in the case of browser. In the case of browser, it's a window object. If you have seen our document, what we have said, environment specific names, depending on the environment you are using, the global object can have the different names. In the case of web browser, it is the window. In the case of Node.js, it is nothing but what? Global. Now, for here we are running this, in the Node.js environment. Node.js works little differently in the case of this. And that's why if I add any variable, let us see what happens over here. Okay, just close, remove that set interval, otherwise it will keep running. TSC app01.ts and node app01.js. Can you see that variable won't be getting added anywhere over here? This is the global object, right? And this is also global object. If you see, so this thing is getting added to the global object. Even the normal function ABCD JKLMNO normal function, yeah, can you see normal function also getting added to the global object? Can you see that? And that's what the meaning of this. See here,
you are executing or writing the function or the variables from the console.
Yeah, this is the JavaScript, right? So your browser understands the JavaScript, yes or no?
Yes.
In the first lecture we have seen this, a is equals to 10, where b is equals to 20. Yeah. This is the JavaScript. This is the purpose of the JavaScript in the beginning days, making your websites dynamic, right? So here if you print the window object or console.log this, it will give you what? The global object. Even this a and b would be, can you see, a and b would be part of this thing. You got it? What do you mean by global object? So here you will not get the things because we are running Node.js. Node.js works in a little different way. You need to understand the modules. So where these things are getting added, that is altogether different story. But presently you don't need that. Okay, but this is clear or not? What is the global object? As far as the Angular is concerned, you need to worry about this window object, this guy. Okay. Yeah. Now it contains the built-in functions like set interval, and the variables in the case of the web browser, the variables you write without any block scope or the function scope, they are a part of global object. Do you understand this?
Yeah.
Okay, now we have understood the global object.
Actually where we require this kind of global objects from programming code.
Yeah, so whenever you need to call the methods like set interval, set timeout, you need a global object at that time. Okay. There are a lot of methods which are written in a global object which are accessible anywhere. Which are accessible what? Anywhere. Okay, so this is the one thing. Now another thing, if you want to write something specifically to the global object, which can be shared across your complete Angular project, you can use this variable, but that practice is not recommended. Right? That practice is not recommended. So variables need to be scoped. A lifetime of the variable should be defined.
But there might be need of global, which we need to access across
the things. You are correct. So there are the strategies, there are design patterns. How exactly the state between two components is shared. So global object creates the memory leak. Okay. Means once you assign the object, that will remain there until your application dies. It shouldn't be like that. If you define one variable, that should that should that should come into the picture only for this function, and after the execution of function it should die. That is not happening with the global object. So that's why global objects should be used with the care. Important consideration. Let's write that. Sorry, important consideration. Let's write that. While, as you rightly said, while convenient, relying too heavily on the global object can make your code harder to understand and maintain. It is generally recommended to keep a global scope clean and use the functions and modules to organize your code better. Right? So this is important. Now we need to come to the conclusion for this code. In a normal functions and in anonymous inner functions, this is by default pointing to whom? Global object. This by default points to what?
Global object.
Global object. Okay. Here and here, this by default points to the global object. Now it's time. Here we can say app02.ts. Let's move to the file.
Why not in case of arrow function?
Why not in case of what?
Arrow function.
We'll see that. You need to know 3 more methods to understand why here and what's happening over here. Okay. So what happens in the arrow functions? We will talk about this. But this is the clear distinction. If you remember, I have told you one thing whenever we have learned the arrow function. Arrow functions and anonymous functions are exactly same, but one difference is there. Do you remember I have said this? Whenever we studied the anonymous functions and the normal functions or arrow functions, I said that both are same, excluding there is a one difference. Right? Now if you see lexical this over here, we already have written. Unlike the regular functions, arrow function inherit the context from their surrounding scope, avoiding issues with unintended binding. Now unintended binding, bind is there. Right? So lexical this. So this is the only difference in your normal functions and anonymous functions. If you see the anonymous functions, passing argument. Okay, this map and return unit we need to see it. Anonymous functions declared using the function. Okay, about this I have not written anything over here. But
yes, we are learning about this today.
So this is the only difference. That's why we have written it over here.
Can you please explain this point again?
This one?
Yeah.
So this is in the case of, so what I explained right now, there is only one difference between arrow function, anonymous function, normal function is this keyword. In normal functions and anonymous functions, this is pointing to the global scope. And here this is pointing to whom. We will see that. For that you need to know one more method, bind method. So here also it is bind with what you can say a global scope. How you will get to know at the time of call, bind and apply. So h1, here we can say call, bind and apply. Now what are these things? We will see. At least one part we will see today. Just a minute. So it is clear what is this? Okay. So we have talked about the global object. Now, before call, bind and apply, this keyword h1, this keyword. Okay. So this keyword has different meaning in the different context. So when you say this keyword, in a function, when you say this keyword in a function, in a normal function, more be precisely, when you use this keyword in normal function or anonymous function, it is bound with the global scope. If you use this keyword in an arrow function, right? So here I can write in normal and anonymous function, in arrow function, and in classes, right, and in objects. So this keyword works differently. In normal functions, just a minute, spelling is wrong. Yeah, normal and the anonymous function, arrow function, it is different, objects it is different, and classes it is different. So and manipulation of this keyword can be done by this call, bind and apply. Now this keyword is important. We have seen these two scenarios, right? And in the object scenario, I just have written this code, person, right? fstnm abc, lstnm pqr, and see now full name flnm is equals to is function which return fstnm plus lstnm. This is giving you error, but here if you write this and here if you write this, error would be getting resolved. And if you print console.log this over here, and I can say person dot flnm. Okay, now let's clear it. tsc app02.ts and node app02 dot, not node. Can you see what it is printing? What this is printing? So here, I'm sorry, here if you see, console.log, right? This thing. And return fstnm. So we didn't write it into the console. That's why it is not printing anything. But can you see here? So this inside, now see again another scenario. This is the anonymous inner function. But this anonymous inner function is inside the object. Is inside the object. And that's why this is printing to this. This is pointing to this object. Can you see that? Behavior of this.
So we can say the scope of this here is actual the scope of the object, means starting and ending of.
You cannot say scope like that, but this will point to whom?
This object.
So this will point
Where
to
it
this.
is present.
Yeah, this object.
Yeah.
But in this case only. Now see, if you try to do something like this plus this dot, can you see here? It is not pointing to the fstnm. See, this now, if you see, if I run this code, and can you see here it is undefined? Can you see that? Which means that this guy is not point here at this place. This is not pointing to this object. Correct? Here this is pointing to the global object. Can you see set interval is accessible over here? So in this case, see here. So if you write this over here and again just run it, can you see it is printing some object, and this is the global object, right? From here also it is printing, or if I just assign this over here, okay, it is not pointing to anyone. But whenever you say this, so this is not pointing to the current object. But if function is there inside that, and then you are writing this, it will print to this, point to this object. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Still few things are missing. Why this is pointing to this object? Why this? If you write anonymous function inside object, it will point to the surrounding scope. We'll see that tomorrow actually. And if by default, if you go over here, what is the surrounding scope? Global object. What is the surrounding scope? This object. Now I will show you one more difference. If I write arrow over here, okay, now run it again, empty. If you see, there is empty, it is not printing anything. This is the difference between arrow function and the normal function. Normal function, this acquires the scope from the surrounding object, while arrow function has no surrounding object scope. It doesn't acquire scope from the surrounding thing, and that's why it is empty over here. Getting my point?
Yes.
That is the only difference.
So, I mean, if you already using, in case of class, if we create the object of the class, in that case,
We'll
can
see.
we access the object? Means we will see that.
Yeah, that is altogether class keyword is altogether different story. We'll talk about that.
So, shortly, in case of object, you can use the this using actually what we call this as means it is
हाँ
just like function or variable. What we
हाँ
can
हाँ
call this
हाँ
as.
yeah will when you talk about this, okay, so that this is nothing but what, a caller object. It works in conjunction with the caller and the surrounding scope. So when we learn the call bind and object call bind and apply, you will get to know this very much clearly. But what I have shown you today, some things about this keyword that might be behave differently in different context,
Correct.
and that's why you'll get a lot of questions in the interview on this part. Call bind apply this keyword global object.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
so we'll see rest of the things tomorrow.
So purpose of this is different in for these four categories.
Yeah, 4 categories.
Mhm. Even if it is the same.
Correct. And as far as Angular is concerned, you need to worry about only this thing.
Okay.
As far as Angular is concerned, TypeScript Angular is concerned, you need to worry about only this thing. That's it. But if you want to become expert in TypeScript, you need to know the JavaScript, because TypeScript is a sugaring layer around the JavaScript,
Right.
right? And that's why I'm emphasizing this is a pure JavaScript concept. Fine, then we'll meet
Okay. Tomorrow?
Wednesday, right?
Yeah, for the class.
Yes.
Tomorrow you're coming in for class.
Yes. So I'm stopping the recording.